We're sorry, the number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.
Hey everyone, how we doing today out there in Final Cut Pro land and the Apple event land and all that stuff? So I watched the event, but I have some questions. First thing is I want your opinion on what you're going to be buying, if you're going to be buying anything from this event. And then I have some comments on the Mac Studio. The display itself, I don't have any comments on that because I'm not going to be getting one of those. But what did you think? I mean, you know, I've been saying that normally this event is not, they usually don't show pro hardware at this spring event. There you go. Apple showed pro hardware at this spring event. So what's going to happen at WWDC? Anything going to be introduced? A couple of interesting things that I noticed. They pre-announced the Mac Pro. They pre-announced, which is, listen, unusual for Apple to do that. They said, we only have one more Mac left to update. To me, what about the iMac? That's not really, aren't they going to update that with the M1 Max and stuff? But they said the Mac Pro is the last one they have to do. Got a comment from Rob Fisher. Hey, how you doing? So I'm excited about what I saw. What about you? I want your opinions. Who's going to be buying these machines? Are you going to be buying them? Who's buying one? Mac's peaking a bit. Oh, Mike. Mike is peaking a bit. It's not peaking on my interface. I'll move it away so I'm not quite so loud. Let me do one thing. If my mic is peaking a bit, let me just do this then. I'll just knock that down. There we go. Now it should be better. Let me just do that. There we go. So Oscar says he is. He's buying one. Oscar, what are you buying? Tell me what you're buying. I am very, very glad that I have my MacBook Pro, to be honest with you. Hey, Richard, very tempted to have to decide between MacBook Pro and Studio. Absolutely. Everybody was waiting for the Mac Mini Pro, whatever, and they didn't do that. And they said there's only one more Mac to be updated, so they're not going to do a Mac Mini Pro. This is your Mac Mini Pro, even though it's not called that. Think the display in a MacBook would work? Absolutely would work. I will definitely be buying a Studio. Need to upgrade from my 2017 iMac 27K. This looks right. Not sure what version for Final Cut Pro. Oh boy, we got a lot to talk about. Okay, Rob says, is this a replacement for the big 27-inch iMac? You mean the display plus this? Is that what you're thinking? The display plus the Studio? You're thinking that's going to replace it? That's a good way to call it. The double mini. It's like the double cheeseburger or the Big Mac. The Big Mac. There you go. The Big Mac. So I want to know what you're going to be buying, what you're interested. Let's talk with what you want, and then I'll tell you some of my opinions. Need to see some more benchmarks. Absolutely. The specs on paper, they only go so far. It looks, you know what it looks like to me? Hi, Richard from Italy. Hope there will be a Final Cut update shortly. So let's talk about that for a second. What video program, I think it was during the the iPad Air, was it Imovie that has all those new things? And she said an update will be coming shortly. Was it Imovie? I didn't catch what it was. Didn't get to watch the event, so I don't know if this is in place of a potential smaller Mac Pro or not, and therefore I should wait or not. It is a smaller Mac Pro. It's more powerful than the 2019 Mac Pro, but that's always the case. The 2019 Mac Pro is, I see what he's talking about. The 2019 Mac Pro, let me just do one thing here. The 2019 Mac Pro is, pull that down a little bit. The 2019 Mac Pro is 2.5 years old, 2.5. Every Mac that comes out now should be better than a 2.5-year-old Mac. I mean, that's the way it should be. So the question I asked, he says, yes, iMovie. So here's the thing. They have these new features in iMovie. They pre-announced it's coming out. Did they say in April or did they say in a month? They said shortly. New features in iMovie. I'm telling, that sounds like new features in Final Cut Pro as well. Otherwise, iMovie is going to be up here and Final Cut Pro development is going to be down here. I don't think so. The fact that they announced, we're going to talk about Final Cut Pro, we're going to talk about Logic, we're going to talk about all the pro apps that they showed that they were not Apple, which is kind of aggravating. But so iMovie was up. They pre-announced an update to iMovie with some neat features. It looked like. Why wouldn't they include those features in the new version of Final Cut Pro? So the new version of Final Cut Pro, I said the last couple of episodes, I said March or April is what I predicted, and I said it'll probably be in time for NAB, which is the fourth week of April. So that's right on schedule. That is right on schedule. Let me just turn this down a little bit. Let me see. Oh, I know what it is. This one. I'll turn this one down. There we go. Maybe that'll sound a little better. So, yeah. So let me go back to some of these comments. I think the big question for Final Cut users is, for many of us, the studio with M1 Max will be a huge upgrade. So I'm wondering if that can cut 8 streams of 4K video. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is coming out quickly. They said it's coming out, shipping on March the 18th. By the way, I was born on the first day of spring, so my birthday is March the 20th, just so you know. Don't buy me a Mac Studio, please. I don't want a Mac Studio. It's not for me. I am very, very satisfied and very glad that I got my MacBook Pro. Now, when they bring out the new Mac Pro, which they pre-announced, once again, they've pre-announced 2 things. They pre-announced iMovie, they pre-announced the Mac Pro. The Mac Pro is not a surprise. Of course, they're going to introduce a Mac Pro. That's not a surprise at all, but they pre-announced it. Apple doesn't pre-announce that much, but they did. I still think the MacBook Pro is the best for my needs. It's best for my needs as well. Yes, display with Studio. They said only one more Mac will be upgraded, the Mac Pro, right? So 27-inch, so no 27-inch iMac. So that's interesting. If that's the route they're going, they're not going to update the iMac any further. They're going to use the display and this Mac Studio instead of the iMac. That's a very interesting choice because the iMac is all in one. They said before there was no iMac Pro coming. They abandoned the iMac Pro. That was the Intel version. That's an interesting combination if that's what they're going to do. Definitely a nice piece of kit, though. I still think there's a place for a smaller Mac Pro with some internal expansion. They didn't have any external expansion. You're absolutely correct. I think the new Mac Pro will be a smaller Mac Pro. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to probably half the size as the other one. So here's one of the things that was interesting to me. This thing is very plain. Very plain. Let me see if I can move. Yeah, you can turn it around. It's not fancy. It's stunningly compact. It's got a lot of air holes, machined air holes. This thing is not very fancy. Not like an iMac. Not like a MacBook Pro. Not even like the Mac Pro, which was much more statuesque and it had beautiful. This thing is like really plain. It's like a pure horsepower is what it looks like to me. This is strictly horsepower. Mac, M1, Max, or Max Ultra, whatever you want to call it, horsepower. That's what this little thing is. So if that's what you want, that's fine. But it's not what I want. I don't need that. If I want the horsepower, I'm going to wait for the Mac Pro. But I understand this is what many people are waiting for. They were waiting for this plus a new display. Wow. That's all I got to say. This was interesting. It's definitely it can be a pro machine. It's not just a consumer machine, though it can be a consumer machine as well. New Mac Pro must have new M chips, not more of the ones we have now. That's correct. The new Mac Pro is going to be the M2. They said this is as far as they're going to take. This is the one more, the M1 Ultra, which is basically 2 M1 Maxes sewn together. Some kind of a fabric sewn together thing. That's what it is. But it is Pro. This Pro moniker, there could be a Mac Studio Pro down the road alongside a Mac Pro. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think the Mac Pro is going to be smaller for sure. The one I have is a beast. It's heavy. When I did an unboxing live on the air when that thing came in, I knew it was coming in. I was watching the FedEx guy or UPS, whatever it was. That thing came in an 80-pound box. 30-pound, 40-pound, 50-pound, gigantic box that thing came in. I couldn't believe how heavy the box was. And then I took the Mac Pro out, and of course the Mac Pro itself is very heavy. During the event, a version of Final Cut Pro is seen on screenshots slightly different from the current ones. Was it different? I put it in the screen grab. Let me pull that up. So it's here, right? This is the version of Final Cut Pro that they showed on the screen. I'm not sure what's exactly is different about it. It's too far away for me to really see anything. But I did catch that screen grab. I did catch the screen grab, so I'm not sure how you can tell it's different. I can't catch it. Somebody will catch it. I don't think they would do a 7K monitor. It just didn't make sense. So the one they have, the studio monitor, is 6K. Is that what it is? iMac Pro is dead, I think. That's interesting. You could absolutely be right with this new Mac Studio and the new display. We'll have to see how that pans out. Apple's spin machine, a force to be reckoned with, but at full face value, the Studio can use up to 1,000 kilowatts less per year than a high-end PC laptop. Since the M1 Max chip on the Studio is a huge upgrade, do you think the Ultra chip is overkill for most Final Cut Pro users? It is $2,000 difference. I think that Ultra is more for maybe 3D rendering and stuff that really requires horsepower, maybe Adobe After Effects. I don't know. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. My M1 Max MacBook Pro is fine for everything that I do. All the editing I do some multi-track, I do 4K. If I get the GH6, I might do 6 that has 5.7K ProRes, 60 frames per second. I really don't need any more than this, than what I got right now, at least for the next couple years. I will upgrade the MacBook Pro when it comes out with an M2 chip, perhaps 2 years from now. That Ultra, if you need that kind of horsepower, if you do like 6K multi-track, or if you're doing heavy After Effects or heavy color grading and things are not what you need right now, that would be for you. For editing, I wouldn't. Is it $2,000 more? Let's look at that. Is that what it is? Wait a minute. You're kidding me. Let's go down here and order now. Let's just see. So let's first go through the 10 core. So the 10 core CPU, 24 core GPU, 16 core neural engine. Let's see how high up we can go. Well, look, you can go up $2,400 just by adding that. Well, that's interesting. And now let's see the memory. $800. Let's see what we get. Now, listen, one thing I learned, do not get the 1 terabyte storage or even the 2 terabyte at this point. 4 terabyte. Okay, that's what we're going to get. Pre-installed software, none. Now, why don't they have Ableton Live like they showed on the event? Why don't they have third-party software here? See, they put it here, but they don't have. All right, look at this price. $67.99. $67.99. $6,800 with just a couple of upgrades. Now let's do this one. This one starts at $4,000. Let's go with the 20 core, 64. Let's go with 128 gigabytes of memory. Once again, 4 terabytes storage. look, if you get 8 terabytes, God bless you. I would get 4 terabytes. We're same thing. It's the same thing. So basically, it's the same machine. $6,800. Okay, I paid 9,000 something for the Mac Pro in 2019. That's what I'm saying. This thing is like pure horsepower, isn't it? Pure horsepower. That's what it seems like to me. It's just pure, unadulterated Mac horsepower in this giant pellet. That's what it seems like. Okay, Sean says the thumbnails look tighter. That's interesting. 5K. So the display is only 5K. I have the same question as Restream. My editing needs are not huge, but I would love to avoid using proxies. And I do a fair amount of optical flow. Listen, get the biggest, most expensive Mac you can afford. That's what you should do. I went from a 2019 Mac Pro, which I love that machine. It's fantastic. I had all this in and out connectivity, and I don't use it anymore because I got the MacBook Pro. The MacBook Pro is my new desktop. Okay, I'm going to put that down. It's my new desktop, but I can also take it to NAB with me. And I can also take it to the Creative Summit with me. So when I go stream live in the evenings, which is what I intend to do, and during the day, I have a powerful Mac Pro. I mean, a MacBook Pro. This is my new desktop, but it's also portable. I'm most interested to see the performance between 64 and 100. Yes. So if you're going to get one, if you're going to just jump on it and do it now, that's fine. But if you wait to see some real world performance on YouTube and places, I don't think they're going to sell out. So you can decide whether the M1 Ultra is worth it for you or the M1 Max is worth it for you. I wouldn't get the Ultra personally. I don't do anything that requires that kind of horsepower. I just don't. It's incredible that they did this in this first spring event. First time I can remember, I think. Just the FYI, the cost saving in kilowatt hours per year is $300. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. So this is interesting. Studios clearly replacing the iMac Pro sense, untethering the display. I paid $8K for my 2017 iMac Pro. There you go. It very well could be, but don't you think there's a market for a larger iMac, even if it's not the iMac Pro? Don't you think there's a market for a 27-inch iMac, all-in-one consumer? Interesting. It's interesting if they go that way. They're decoupling the iMac. They're decoupling it. It is interesting. It's very, very interesting. So Apple pre-announced the Mac Pro, the M1 Max Pro, or the M series Mac Pro. It'd probably be the M2. Probably it could come out this year. They could show it at WWDC to say it's going to be out later this year, which means December. Or, they seem to be pretty far along. The form factor would be the biggest thing, and the Mac Pro absolutely has to have expansion. Otherwise, just use the Mac Studio. If you don't need expansion, get the Mac Studio, right? So a larger iMac will come back, but they'll wait a while. I'd be surprised if they don't come out with a 27-inch iMac. It doesn't have to be the iMac Pro because the 27-inch iMac would be an iMac Pro if you upgraded certain ways. See specs, M1 Max has one video engine and two video encode engines. M1 Ultra has two Oreo. But the M1 Ultra is two M1 Max, right? Isn't that what it is? It's two Max, then they're somehow tethered together with some kind of an ultra-fast thing. So it should have double of everything. That's my opinion. from what I've got out of it. Now, I haven't had a chance to study this. I was watching it, and I was out in the field. I was doing something else at the same time. So I had my laptop going, and I was watching and watching and watching, and then the Mac Studio came up. I took my iPhone out because I had to talk with people, and I was watching it, talking to them, watching, talking to them. So I didn't get all of the specs and everything. Yes, so they did say the M1 Ultra is the last chip of the M1 lineup. So exactly. So the M2, I expect, how often do they update the MacBook Pro? Every 3 years? Big updates? If they did it every 2 years, I would probably be in the market for, I'd just trade this one in and get the fastest one. This MacBook is really all that I need. It's plenty fast for what I do. I'm not doing 6K multicam with 20 tracks and stuff like that. I'm not doing that. I do a multicam, 4 tracks, 4K typically. Yeah, it's a special interconnect, so double everything. That's exactly correct. It's like 2 of those. I'm very satisfied with what I've got. If I didn't have this, then I would be tempted to get the Studio. But here's the thing. My MacBook Pro costs $4,200. That's with a keyboard, trackpad, and a display. $4,200. We just saw. We went and priced this headless thing, and it's $6,800. Almost, not quite twice as much as my MacBook Pro. It's not for me. I'm going to stick with my MacBook Pro at this point. Now, this is the best of everything except for the SSD. If we go with SSD, let me see. If we go with the SSD, 8 terabyte storage. Look at the price. $8,000. So if you go with the 8 terabyte of storage, it's twice as much. But I wouldn't do that. I'm very satisfied with the 4 terabytes that I have in my MacBook Pro. Very, very satisfied. So what do you think? I guess the decision is whether or not you get the M1 Ultra or not. Keep doing your comments. We will. Let me just turn that back on. Keep doing your comments. I want to know what you're all going to do. That's what we're here for everybody to talk about what they're going to be doing. That's what I'd like. Since M1 is based off the Series 8 chips, I think they will probably refresh the line every couple of years like they do with the iPads. So every 2 years, is that what you're thinking? 2 years is fine. As much as I like my MacBook Pro, I would trade this in every 2 years to get the latest and greatest MacBook Pro. 3 years would be fine too. 2 or 3 years for me. If it was 18 months, I wouldn't do it. I would wait for whatever spurred me on. One of the questions I have is this. Look, was I mistaken, or did they promote other software and they didn't promote Final Cut Pro and Logic? What is this? What is this? Is that Logic? No, it's not Logic. Ableton Live, is that what that is? And they didn't promote, they promoted Adobe After Effects, I think, and something else, but where was the promotion and the love for Final Cut Pro and Logic? They didn't, did they even mention Final Cut Pro? I saw the one screen grab. I got that. Did they even mention Logic or Final Cut Pro? They're promoting other software and they're not giving love to Final Cut Pro and Logic? I mean, I know a lot of people that use this software in the recording studios. People like it. It's really interesting that they're promoting other software at this point. Waiting for Mac Pro for now. So Eric, you said you're waiting for the Mac Pro. Are you going to spend $10,000 on a Mac Pro? Because that's what it's going to be. a top end one, don't you think? That's what I paid for mine. Would you buy the new studio display or get something from a non-Apple company? I don't do mission critical color grading, so I would not, although it's not a bad price, right? It's like how much is that one? Let's go back and look. Because I thought it was $1,500, or was it more than that? Order now. Let's go back and look at this. I thought it was standard glass, nano textured. What's the difference? The difference is $300. We'll go with nano textured deck with it. Tilted adjustable stand. Absolutely. Wait a minute. That can't be an addition. That's with this. That's the kind of stand you want, right? That's included. Let's go with tilt and height adjustable. Okay, so that's only $22.99, $2,300. If you got the tilt adjustable, it's $1,900. Let's say that's not too bad, right? Standard glass. Let's go the cheapest route. Yeah, $1,600. That's not a bad price. That's not a bad price if it's a good display. It's 27-inch, correct? That's what I think it is, 27-inch. So to answer your question, I don't do any mission critical color correcting or anything. I don't need that kind of display. I have a 34-inch ultra wide. This is what I have. So I have this display, 34-inch ultra wide LG that I've had for years. I used to use this display with my iMac, connected to my old 2017 iMac. This is the display that I like. I like the wider aspect ratio so I can put up a nice long timeline. I like that better than the square, the more 4x3 displays. But I don't need that mission critical display now. I would not hesitate to buy it if I did. If I got a job that said, hey, you got to do this color correcting, I would start getting tutorials and then go ahead and get that display. I have a 2020 27-inch iMac, works great, but whenever I do upgrade, I will get the base Mac Studio. That thing looks like a killer. I'm telling you, it's like pure horsepower. They mentioned new iMovie for iPads. That's coming out later this year. Exactly. They pre-announced the new version of iMovie, and they pre-announced the Mac Pro. Hooray for Apple. Hooray for Apple pre-announcing things. Now tell us about Final Cut Pro, which is what we want to know about. I would presume the iMovie version on the iPad is going to be something that Final Cut Pro is going to get. I didn't catch if you think there will be a pro version of this new studio machine. Tangier, I don't think so. I think this is the pro version of the studio because it's up to $7,000 or $8,000 as it is. Now I know you want expansion. I think you have to wait for the Mac Pro for that. That's what I think. Will I get the Mac Pro? Very unlikely. Craig says, are the Pro apps doomed? We keep waiting for big updates and nothing. I am not going to disagree with you, Craig. I'm not doomed. No. I think that they have a lot of catching up to do at this point. Listen, every time I go to edit something, I always grab Final Cut Pro. I mean, I know it very well, and I like the features that it has. But boy, it's got a lot of things that could use. So we're waiting for the big updates. You're not alone. Many of us are. I've lowered my expectations on what the team's capable of delivering. I think right now they've been stalled for about 3 years. And I'm not interested in the excuses why. I don't care about the excuses why. Because everybody has the same playing field. Everybody's got to develop M1 Mac software. Everybody's got it to deal with COVID. Everybody's got this, not just the Final Cut Pro team, but everybody else. Look at Blackmagic. I'll be going to NAB. They'll probably have Resolve 18 out there. Probably. I mean, Blackmagic is going to be there. But I mean, I'm not losing faith, but it's just, I've tempered it. I've tempered my expectations. They don't want the monopoly police coming down on if they promote their own software, but they do promote their own software. They just don't promote Final Cut Pro and Logic. $10K easily. So that's what you're expecting to pay for the Mac Pro? Yeah, that's realistic, especially if beast of a machine. Now tell me, Eric, what do you do that you need that kind of horsepower, that Mac Pro? Tell me what kind of work that you do. Mostly what I do is editing, is video editing. I do a lot of audio with the audio plugins. Yes, I could use more of those. I could use more horsepower for that, for sure. I love, I'm addicted to plugins for Logic. Maybe they are promoting other software to encourage more pros to switch. No, I understand, like, for example, Photoshop, After Effects, those are gigantic, ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So I understand promoting that. But why not include Final Cut in there as well? Why not include, hey, I'm going to promote Ableton Live. Why not promote Final Cut Pro and Logic at the same time? Of course, Apple wants to sell Macintoshes. They don't really care if you use Final Cut Pro on it, Logic, Ableton Live, or Adobe After Effects, if they sell a Mac. Their purpose is to sell a Mac. We care that they should be, I'm saying they should be promoting Final Cut Pro along with the rest of those. Now, maybe we'll do that at WWDC this year, which is what they've done in the past. Prosumer Beast, like I said, that Mac Studios, prosumer doesn't spend $8,000, whatever the heck it was. Wish it was HDR OLED display. I don't have an opinion on that. Think that's the first new Apple hardware I will buy. If I didn't have the my MacBook Pro, I would be tempted to get one of those. I wouldn't get the top end for me because I'm not doing anything that really requires that. We'll see. 5K 27-inch display is disappointing and overpriced. Oh, is it really? Okay. Okay, so you wanted 6K and it's something a little bigger? Is that what you would wanted? So there's the benefit between an iMac and the Mac Studio display combo. Where is the benefit between an iMac and the Mac Studio Plus? I don't know. If I was me at this point, getting a Mac, a regular old Mac, I don't think I'd get the display. If it's 5K and overpriced, I wouldn't need it. I just get an LG monitor. Have Pro Display XDR with MacBook Air M1. If I go for a Mac Studio, I won't need a display. There you go. So that's the deal. What is everybody else? Red 8K theatrical. Well, there you go. There you go. If you're doing Red 8K theatrical, yes, you please get a Mac Pro. You know, the only reason I would get a Mac Pro, unless they develop a quad die chip for the Mac Pro, and the only thing I think the differentiator from the Mac Studio is adding PCI slots. That's correct. That's what I'm thinking. It's got to have expansion. The only reason I would get a Mac Pro is to trade in my 2019 Mac Pro on the Mac Pro. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to sell my 2019. I don't really need that kind of horsepower. I'm very, very satisfied with the MacBook Pro. It's got a beautiful display. The keyboard is nice. Plenty of power for me. If I didn't have this, yes. I just bought this when did it come out? October last year. So it's about 6 months old, and it's a fantastic machine. And the other thing is, I'm planning on going to NAB. I'm planning on going to Creative Summit. I wouldn't be taking the Mac Studio with me. I wouldn't be taking that with me. I take an iPhone or two, and I take an iPad, but that's not what I broadcast with. I broadcast with my MacBook Pro. So I need a powerful MacBook Pro. What surprised me is how good this has replaced my desktop. This MacBook Pro is my new desktop. So Garrett says, I was talking about the screen. I'm not considering a new MacBook Pro or Studio yet. Okay. The M1 Max is an increase in GFX power of the M1 Pro. The Ultra is an increase in both GFX and processing power, right? Yes, but it's just double. It's two M1 Max hooked together with some kind of ultra high-speed connectivity, I think, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not as good as putting them together on the same die or whatever the M2 is going to be. Look, this is the beginning of M1 development, software-wise, hardware-wise. The beginning. Getting to a place to the middle or even the high end of the M1 Max is going to be very, 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 very fast. Things are going to leapfrog each other year after year after year after year. So, what's the lowdown on the screenshot of Final Cut Pro during the keynote? Yeah, we went over that. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure. Can anybody recognize anything different about it? I don't know. It's too small for me. It's too small for me to look at. You know what? I have a, let me pull this up. I think I have a screen grab of just the Mac Pro. I think. Do I? Yeah, there it is. All right, let me pull this up. Let me do this. I'll pull it up down here. I got so many things going on. All right, let's do this. So let's see if we can see anything different with this. All right? Let's see if we can see anything different with this. So this is the screenshot that I grabbed. Is there anything different in this screenshot of Final Cut that's obvious? I mean, it's not very clear, and I think they purposely did not show you a clear picture for whatever reason. So that's a multicam on the left in the viewer, and it's a bunch of audio. I really can't see. I can punch in, but it's too blurry, so that's not going to work. Because I only got a small shot of it. I don't see anything specifically, although, yeah, because it's all audio underneath, two different rolls, the two different colors of green, and then the main timeline has a single, well, I think that's the multicam, right? 16 or 12 tracks of video. That's what it looks like to me up here. So I don't know. Does anybody recognize anything different? I don't think I can recognize anything different. Maybe you can, but I don't think I can find anything different in that screenshot. But that was intentional, wasn't it? That was intentional. On the new Studio, adding 4 terabyte of storage is 1,000 versus 1 terabyte. Why are you into 4 terabyte versus 1 terabyte for internal drive and cheaper external storage? Because what I found, right now I can, right now my MacBook Pro, okay, it's connected to 56 terabytes of RAID 5 plus 2 other RAID 5s, and each of those have 12 usable terabytes of RAID 5, plus I'm powering 2 displays, the LG and another display over here, plus I have an audio interface, plus I'm running Stream Deck, plus I'm running a dock off this MacBook Pro, right, as a desktop. However, all I have to do is unplug 2 cables, and I can take this on the road. I unplug 2 cables, and it's ready to go to NAB, ready to go to the Creative Summit with me. That's what I really like about it, that it's powerful enough to be a desktop. Everything that I got RAIDs connected, I got displays connected, audio interfaces, Stream Deck, a dock over there, but I can disconnect a couple of cables and I'm ready to go. And it's still all the power goes with me. So to answer your question, I originally got on my Mac Pro, the 2019 Mac Pro, I got 2 terabyte SSD. To me, that would be the bare minimum that I would get because it's just, well, first off, for example, I have Superior Drummer 3, and all those samples are loaded on my main drive is because it's super fast. So there's things that I have on the main drive. And I have plenty of external storage. I have 2 Samsungs. Let me grab one while I'm talking about it. I have 2 of these, the T5 or the T3. This is a T3, and I have a T7, and I have a real Thunderbolt SSD, 2 terabytes each. I'd rather just do stuff on my 4 terabyte hard drive, internal hard drive. So I try to go, and the thing is, they're not that much less expensive. And the internal SSD on this thing, 7,000 megabits per second. I mean, yeah, the internal one. The external ones are less than half of that. So the speed difference is phenomenal. The speed is phenomenal with the internal SSD. So I would say if you want to get 1 terabyte in external, but I would absolutely get 2 terabytes. You don't have to worry about updating so much. When I take this on the road, I'll have 4 terabytes of this. I'll have external hard drives with me. Looks like the same old, the version of Final Cut. Yes. I have to run. Thank you for hosting this. Absolutely, Peter. Thank you for stopping by. Audio meters look fatter. Yes, I do those fatter myself. I pull that window closer. Wider. I thought the TC is now centered, not centered below the player area. Maybe I'm wrong. Time code, I thought it was. I keep wondering when they drop support of Intel Macs for Final Cut Pro and Logic. Not for another year or so. Most people, I think, are still on Intel. I'd say if you go to the numbers, Apple announced 2.5 million Final Cut Pro seats in 2018. 2.5 million in 2018. That's 4 years ago. 2.5 million. They announced it at NAB in 2018. 2.5 million 4 years ago. We're certainly up to 4 million or more after they announced 2.5. They stopped doing the announcements. I don't think they're going to drop support for Final Cut Pro and Logic. I think they're going to phase it out. So Intel Macs, yes, Intel Macs are going to be the next version of the Mac OS is WWDC, June of this year. That will be an Intel version and an M1 version of the OS. That will last for an additional year. They haven't said what they're going to do beyond that. At some point, yes, they will stop updating everything for Intel Macs, but I think you're going to 1 more year, year and a half, 2 more years, and they'll start phasing it out. But as the M1 Macs get more and more advanced and they're more powerful, there's going to be features that the M1 only has and the Intels do not have. That's just the way it's going to work, of course. Oscar says, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for showing up, everybody. I appreciate it. I've been saving for a Mac Pro for years. I no longer need one. The Studio Ultra should fit my needs for many years. There you go. There you go. The maxed out Ultra is less than half the price of what I was budgeting for the Mac Pro. The only thing is the Mac Pro has incredible expansion. Incredible expansion. 8 PCIe slots that thing has. When I had my setup, I had 10 Thunderbolt 3 ports. 10, the way I had mine set up. 10 Thunderbolt 3. Plus, I had a USB 3 card in the PCI slot, 3.1 or 3.2, I forget which it was. It has 2 Ethernet ports with 10 gig. I think there are two 10 gig Ethernet ports on that thing. And you can, put new graphics cards in it, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like the Mac Pro is dead, because it's not. It's not. But I don't need 2 Macs. This MacBook Pro is running fantastic. I'm very, very pleased with it. On the Mac Studio page in fine print section, they're calling it Final Cut Pro. There you go. This is what they do. Final Cut Pro 10.6.2. There you go. Good catch, Daniel Suzuki. So we know a new version is coming out. The Studio will be my first M1 Mac. I think most Final Cut Pro plugins are compatible at this point. Most. I think audio is more problematic with updating. They were a little slower. I had to wait for my Apollo Twin X, and I don't even know if it's fully compatible yet. I'm not sure if the plugins, hardware, fully compatible. But it runs fine because you're listening to it right now. So let's go there. On the Studio Apps page in fine print, since you brought it up, Mr. Suzuki, let's go check it out. All right. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry. I don't want that one. Mac Studio. Let's go see what's going on here. Where did you see that? Let me just pull it up. There you go. You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct there, my friend. That's a great catch. Here you go. Here it is. Pre-release Final Cut Pro 10.6.2. So there's your pre-announcement of a new version of Final Cut Pro. It's not a surprise. They brought out 10.6 last year, almost 4 or 5 months ago, so it's due. And I've been saying that for quite a while, that, well, I said March and April. Those are the months to watch for the update to Final Cut Pro before NAB. Now, I do not expect 10.6.2 to be a bug fix. Will it contain bug fixes? Absolutely. Absolutely. It'll contain bug fixes, but in performance increases, blah, blah, blah. But it's got to have new features. It's got to have some new features. Now, this will make NAB more exciting. Right there, a new version of Final Cut Pro coming out before NAB with new features. That means there's going to be some things happening at NAB around Final Cut Pro, even if it's just from third-party vendors and stuff. So 10.6.2 has been pre-announced. Imovie's been pre-announced. The new Mac Pro has been pre-announced. I didn't think they were going to update iMovie, pre-announce it, and not update Final Cut Pro. That was my thinking. So Rob says, do you think the studio display is accurate in color so I don't need an extra display for grading? I would think so. I mean, you're paying that much for a monitor, for a display. I would think so. But once again, I'm not in the market for one. So there you go. So anyway, I highly recommend getting an M1 Mac, whatever you're going to do. Whatever your upgrade cycle is, get an M1 Mac. with the most you can afford. I definitely recommend at least a 2 terabyte hard drive. I see people that got 256 terabyte SSD drive. I don't know how you get along. I couldn't get along with that. My what do I have right now? Let me just check and see what I have on my main hard drive. All right, I have 2.83 terabytes available on a 4 terabyte drive. So I'm about one and a quarter terabyte that I've used, and I'm not really saving anything here. I'll do small projects on the internal SSD. My Final Cut Pro cache for all my libraries is on the SSD. But I use my RAID 5 for my bigger projects. I have a couple projects that are terabytes large, and I have 2 of them I'm working on right now. And they work off the RAID, which is Thunderbolt 3. I don't know if Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. Thunderbolt 4 it is, because I have a Thunderbolt 4 cable that came with it. I think it is. I don't know. The speed doesn't really make much difference. So there you go. We got a pre-release version of Final Cut Pro 10.6.2, pre-announced, not a big surprise. Nice to have confirmation from Apple. It would be nice if Apple did some promoting of Final Cut Pro and promoting of, let's see something here. Let's see. Final Cut Pro anywhere? I don't think I see Final Cut Pro except for that one little teeny Thunderbolt. They're confusing me with this Thunderbolt USB-C. So they said some Thunderbolt there. Then they said something about the Thunderbolt 4 on the front. And they said these are USB-C. No, they're actually Thunderbolt 4. I don't know. It's USB-C is the connection, but Thunderbolt is the actual bandwidth. You just said that you edit direct to the RAID 5? Absolutely. That's what I do my big projects on. Now, the RAID 5 is connected, it's Thunderbolt 4, and I get about 1,200 megabits per second transfer back and forth. But the cache is on my internal SSD, MacBook Pro. But on my, it's been fine. It's been completely fine. What do y'all think? Look at that. It's my backyard. Sun setting around here. We're getting to be springtime very, very shortly. So anyway, I think we're good for today. You guys are fantastic showing up here and let me know what you're going to be getting. This conversation will be obviously continuing. I'll be curious to see some of the real world specifications for this Mac Studio. So we talked about last week about the Mac Studio. Can you tell me a bit about the RAID 5 cost, etc.? So I don't use my RAIDs for storage, okay? I pull things off of the RAID for storage. If I'm going to store something, I get 2 8 terabyte drives, and I make a copy of the stuff on both the 8 terabyte drives, and I catalog it with NeoFinder. But I have some large projects that I need to work on live. So those are the ones on the RAID 5 are projects that I'm going to be working on now or going to be working on next week or the week after. And right now I have 56 terabytes after the RAID 5 configuration. And I think I have, of those 56, I have 40 some terabytes available. So I've used 10 or 12 terabytes that's active projects that I'm working on. And it runs fine. There's different RAIDs out there. RAID 5, this has been working fine for me. But don't think of a RAID as a place you store stuff, because that's a mistake. You have to back your RAID up. You have to back your RAID up. I'll tell you why. If your RAID, one of your drives goes up in your RAID 5, right? You're okay. You're safe. However, while the RAID 5 is rebuilding, when you put a new drive in and it starts the rebuilding process, when you're talking about terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of storage, it can take 24, 48 hours or longer to rebuild the RAID 5 with that failed drive. Okay? If at any point during that 24 hours or 48 hours, there's a hiccup, electric goes out for a second and comes back on. Any kind of a hiccup, you could lose everything on your RAID 5. That's why you don't use RAID 5 for storage. It's really good. I have 3 of them, and everything's fine, but everything is backed up on separate hard drives, 2 hard drives at least. So if something happens to the RAID 5, everything is backed up. Everything is cataloged with NeoFinder. I go to NeoFinder, I type in the subject, I can see what external drives I have it on, and I can bring them back to the RAID 5. So don't use it for storage. It's not storage. I mean, it's storage temporarily, but always back the RAID 5 up. Personally, I have the OWC one, and it's been very, very nice. I really like it. It's 8 drives, 8 drive. One of the drives is for RAID 5. It's for redundancy. So I have 7 drives of usable space plus speed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's perfect info. Thanks tons. Yeah, it's a little confusing out there. I looked at getting a NAS and stuff like that. They weren't for me. I wanted direct attached storage. I don't need network attached storage. I'm not working with other editors in my studio. I'm just by myself. Well, I am, but when he comes up, he brings his MacBook Pro and we just work off my stuff because I have all the storage. Everybody, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. If you have any questions or any more comments, go ahead and shout them out and we'll get to them before we leave here today. Interesting events. So far I'm very pleased. Thomas says thank you. Absolutely. So this, let's go through this. Oh, here we go. There you go. You watched it all. The phones, we knew the new phones were coming, and then there's cores and 8 times more than this. I mean, these specs are, of course, all on paper. They're not necessarily. This is what was a little aggravating. I'm going to turn the volume down, but Ableton Live, and then they had Adobe After Effects, and then they have Vectorworks, and then they have Simmer 4K, and then they have. Where's the Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro love? Why not include Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro in there? They don't sell Macs? Of course they sell Macs. That's why I'm using it. Maybe they're mad at the Final Cut Pro team or the Final Cut Pro team is on vacation. I don't know. I don't know for a fact, but it just seems odd that they don't promote their own stuff. Especially, that's what we like. We like Final Cut Pro. I like Logic. I like Final Cut Pro. Those are my favorite. I've had my 48 terabyte C RAID for 5-6 years. One drive has gone bad. There you go. The best way to prevent a drive from going bad in a RAID 5 is to buy spare drives when you buy the RAID. That's what I did with mine. And the other drives say, oh, we don't want to go bad because he's got a replacement already. So I have spare drives for my I have 2 RAID 5s, 16 terabytes raw, 12 terabytes after the RAID 5. I have spare drives for both of them. One's a G-Tech, one's a Promise. And then my big 56 terabyte RAID 5, which is 64 terabytes raw, 56 terabytes after the RAID 5 is done. And I'm down into the 40s of available space, which is more than it's plenty. It's completely plenty, but just back it up. Back up those RAIDs. Don't depend on the RAIDs. Think they're archival because they're not. They're not at all. It's fine for working and stuff, and I have plenty of speed on it. So, yes, exciting stuff. And thanks again. Thanks to Apple. Thanks to everybody who's hard working on these new products. They're fantastic. Now we got a new version of Final Cut Pro coming out, 10.6.2. Let me just check. By any strange coincidence, did they bring it out today? No, they don't. I don't see it there. I do not see it there. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. Oh, I'm going to do one more thing before we go. Because one more thing. I'm going to do this, do that, do that. Let me just do that. Create file, dashboard, support members. Okay, here you go. This is one of my very rare promotions. I'm going to NAB and I need coffee. I need coffee to go to NAB. Absolutely go to NAB. So you can go to buymeacoffee/Richard Taylor and buy me a coffee. It doesn't have to be for NAB. You can buy me a coffee for these live streams that I do. You can buy me a coffee for Final Cut Pro Radio. Doesn't make any difference. Buy me a coffee. Get a chance. I'm going to NAB. I'll need coffee when I'm there for sure. So buy me a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Richard Taylor, and you can buy me one. It would be appreciated, and I will enjoy coffee. I do enjoy coffee. It's sad that the studio display doesn't seem to have Ethernet like the M1 iMac has. Do displays typically have Ethernet? I don't know. Does my display have an Ethernet? I don't know. I do not know. Thanks, Richard. Fun discussion. Glad to connect with a fellow video producer from Maryland. Thanks for being for the Final Cut Pro community. Where in Maryland are you, Robert? Let me know. We're in Maryland. I'm in Carroll County. I've been here for a long time. I was born in Washington, D.C., on the first day of spring. Those are two important things, aren't they? They are indeed. Let me just check over here. I appreciate everybody stopping by. It's always, I do these things. I'm not making any money from them. That's not the reason I do them. Financially, I'm okay. But at Ellicott City, wow, you're close by. Robert, we have to have coffee. That's about 20 minutes away. As a matter of fact, I was in Columbia earlier today when I was watching the live stream. Thanks. Absolutely. Everyone, I'm going to get on out of here. We talked about the Mac Studio. We heard the rumors last week. So let me just check on one thing real quick. I'm just curious. Get on out of here. Yep, there's the audio working well. Brandon says the M1 Mac only has Ethernet if you get the upgraded model that has it on a power supply. Okay, there you go. There you go. That's the deal. So I'm not going to be getting a studio. Daniel says, these are always fun. See y'all next time. Absolutely, everyone. Thanks for everybody for stopping by. You're the one that makes the show. I do the presentation. You guys, the other thing is you can comment after the fact. You can comment there as well. So, you know what? I have a New York style pizza waiting for me for dinner. And I'm not sure what I'm going to watch. Probably finish up something. I forget what I'm watching on television. Catching up on Dexter. I never saw Dexter, the original run, so now I'm catching up on that. And then Servant on Apple TV and a couple of other shows. I'm not sure what we're going to watch tonight. I'll ask my girlfriend what she wants. I don't care. Seems like a Friday to me. I had a lot of work to do today, and I got it done. It's been something I've been working on for months and months and months, and it's finally done. So that's a big relief on my part. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And go to Final Cut Pro Radio, fcpradio.com. You can, of course, find me, Richard Taylor, on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, Richard Taylor TV, everywhere. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you